Hi there, friends. It's such a pleasure to have your company for another informative weekend edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Adrian Atkinson. Coming up in this half hour, we continue to examine government's budgeted allocations to sectors important to the economy. Healthwise looks at the prevention and management of the non-communicable diseases, diabetes and obesity. Sit back and relax with these and more important features following this important message.
Jamaica's COVID-19 vaccination plan is still in effect. If you wish to make an appointment, please do so online by visiting moh.gov.jm or by calling 888-663-5683. Vaccination still a keep. Go get your jab today.
Agriculture is a critical aspect of the government's economic program to fuel growth and prosperity and to provide food and nutrition security for Jamaica. Let's look at how the Portfolio Ministry is spending its budgetary allocation for the upcoming financial year.
The vision of the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries to build out a more innovative, resilient, sustainable and internationally competitive sector will be advanced in the 2022-2023 fiscal year with $10.2 billion in expenditure for housekeeping expenses. An extra $1.5 billion will be added from projected revenue during the year. The bulk of that, $9.5 billion, will support the Ministry's agricultural production, productivity and food security program. The ministry is also allocated $4.5 billion to fund key development projects with the help of Jamaica's bilateral partners. Over $1.3 billion of the sum is to advance the Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project. This is providing irrigation water to farmers in Amity Hall and Bridgepen St. Catherine, as well as Parnassus in Clarendon. Targets for this year include acquisition of GIS equipment, starting the rehabilitation of roads and construction of a pump house and reservoir, in addition to rehabilitation and installation of irrigation networks and canal. Work will also continue on the Essex Valley Irrigation Infrastructure Development Program to benefit farmers in the St. Elizabeth area. This push towards food security and increased production will see over $2.6 billion being spent to install irrigation pipes, fittings, meters and other equipment. The ministry's push to create a more modern, efficient and sustainable agriculture sector continues with further upgrades to the Bodles Research Station in St. Catherine. The tasks to be undertaken this fiscal year include starting construction of housing for dairy workers. Domestic water tanks, pond liner and irrigation fittings at Fruit Tree Nursery will also be installed, and a small ruminant house and milk testing laboratory is being rehabilitated. The government, in partnership with the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, will continue the project for promoting community-based climate resilience in the fisheries sector. With a budget of $99.6 million, a final report on monitoring, surveillance and control is to commence, along with upgrade of mariculture facilities. Also, a draft strategy and action plan for fisheries and aquaculture policy is to be developed and pelagic market plan completed. Government is also spending $65 million in the new fiscal year on the 3-year soil fertility mapping project. A pilot mapping needs assessment will be done and manual maps digitized. Soil sampling and analysis as well as fertility mappings will also be done. Fertilization recommendations for specific geo-referenced localities will also be designed. A $3.9 billion investment is also being made in the modernization of the agricultural sector. This capital project kicks off with a $150 million allocation this year through funding support from the government and the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB. The program seeks to increase agricultural productivity and income for farmers through better animal and plant health services, food safety services, and public-private partnerships that will increase local and export market linkages.
It is for us now as a government to see this as the facilitation of one of our most critical goals. The goal for us to drive production of agriculture and fisheries in our country, to contribute to our national development, to contribute to creating an extended value chain.
What a way you're full of our roots and culture. That was in Jamaica 60. Jamaica 60? What a piece of news, Miss Matty. I feel like my heart going bust up.
Just in, the island of Jamaica is on the verge of celebrating its 60th year of independence.
I only well for celebrating it. They say the people them them come here, you know. But you see when our people decide, say the other people them free paper, burn up. Them say if it's war, start it, whatever. We all collect medal panta fight, you know. Medal. Amount of tongue we give them, you know.
The celebrations are slated to begin on January 1st, 2022. Organized by the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. We have more in this report.
I am on site and planning activities are ablaze. Persons are advised to download the Reggae Jamaica app to know what it activities for the Jamaica 60 celebration.
I don't know the app to get the updates then.
Unhealthy eating and lack of regular exercise can result in overweight or obesity, a major contributor to several non-communicable diseases, NCDs. In this HealthWise segment of the magazine, let's see how to determine if you're overweight or obese and what to do to prevent the associated NCDs.
Overweight is defined as having an excess amount of body weight, but that can occur from increased amounts of muscle, bone, fat, or water, whereas obesity is defined as having an excess amount of body fat.
The excess fat that leads to a diagnosis of obesity mainly occurs when the body takes in more calories from foods than it is able to burn through exercise and normal daily activities. The result is a major health threat, as obesity is usually accompanied by other issues such as type 2 diabetes mellitus and non-communicable diseases such as hypertension, heart disease, stroke, and various cancers.
Obese men are more likely than non-obese men to die of cancers of the colon, rectum, and prostate, and obese women are more likely than non-obese women to die of cancers of the gallbladder, breast, cervix, uterus, and ovaries. There are other conditions like gallbladder disease of different kinds, which are associated with obesity.
Infertility and poor quality of life can also result. So diagnosis and management of obesity is of enormous significance.
And there are ways to assess it. The commonest way to assess obesity is by using what we call the body mass index, or BMI. And the BMI is essentially your body weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared. And we have scales to judge what your weight status would be. Less than 18.5 BMI would be considered to be underweight. Normal weight is 18.5 to 24.9. 25 to 29.9 would be considered to be overweight, and BMIs of greater than 30 are all considered to be obese.
It's generally easier to gain weight than it is to lose it, which means avoiding practices that lead to excess fat consumption is the easiest route to avoiding obesity. But if you're already overweight, the process may be difficult, but it is achievable. You may need help from physicians, nutritionists, physical trainers, and even therapists, so you should seek them out if that's the case. Either way, most experts will tell you that weight loss requires behavioral change, lifestyle changes that are gradual and long-term.
The problem in our society, of course, is the same as anywhere else. Less physical activity, we're working harder, we don't have time to schedule exercise, and of course, unhealthy eating habits. So more fast food, less fruits and vegetables, less freshly prepared foods, and consumption of large amounts of sugar-sweetened beverages. So this is what fuels it.
Eating healthy helps to keep us healthy. Are you thinking about what would be a healthy and balanced meal, but just can't decide on what foods you should be having? Jamaica's food-based dietary guidelines can provide you with answers. The guideline from the Ministry of Health provides information for individuals, health professionals, nutrition educators, and the food industry. It encourages a daily diet of items from all the food groups. That should include fruits and vegetables, as well as peas and beans and nuts. And the things we ought to avoid are clear: excess salt, that is more than the daily recommended amount, as well as fats and oils and sugary foods and drinks. Also,
if you lead a sedentary lifestyle, then it's very easy for you to become obese because you're not going to be able to burn off the calories that you take in. And of course, if you eat unhealthily, you're more likely to become obese because your body's going to store all these excess calories as fat.
So one of the ways to counteract obesity is to engage in regular physical exercise, like going for brisk walks, jogging, swimming, or riding a bicycle. Regular exercises like these burn calories and get rid of excess fat and weight, helping to control blood cholesterol, blood sugar, and even high blood pressure. Experts in health services say children can be set up to become obese later in life. Don't be weighted down by obesity. Take charge of your good health. Eat well, exercise, and get about the business of living well.
We're continuing to be health-wise now with a focus on diabetes. While this disease has no cure, if it's managed well, persons with the condition can live healthy, normal lives. Let's see how.
Diabetes is a serious chronic lifestyle disease affecting millions of people over the world and continues to increase. Diabetes affects how your body turns food into energy. It is a disease in which your blood glucose or blood sugar levels are too high, and glucose comes from the food you eat. Insulin is a hormone that helps the glucose get into your cells to give energy. Sometimes your body doesn't make enough or any at all, doesn't make any insulin, and so it doesn't use the insulin well. Glucose then stays in your blood and doesn't reach your cells. Over time, having too much glucose in your blood can cause complications. Example, situations with the kidney, heart disease, and so on. Although diabetes has no cure, there are steps you can take to manage your diabetes and stay healthy.
It is through lifestyle that we manage the risk of diabetes. Those behaviors include increased physical activity, a healthy diet, routine health checks, and strict adherence to medication. The Ministry will be championing the cause of persons living with diabetes. We have updated our clinical management guidelines, which is now available on our website, and we will be working on increasing access to testing through the introduction of point-of-care testing. This methodology of testing is the gold standard for monitoring and control of diabetes. Our agency, the National Health Fund, will continue to support persons through the provision of diabetic medication and supplies, and I encourage persons with diabetes to enroll in the NHF card program to access this benefit.
The person with diabetes should really have an opportunity to sit down with a trained clinician who is able to help them to understand the concepts of diabetes self-management, education, and support. There are 4 core areas the patient must begin to understand. how and when to take medication. That's the first one. If you take insulin, then you need to know how does your insulin work and how do you eat in relation to the insulin. Then there are the people who have type 2 diabetes, which commonly start off with education on activity and just healthy nutrition. And then we add 1 of 5 classes of oral agents. And then we teach them how to make food, how to eat food. Also, we think of things like target blood pressure. Is your weight healthy, or do you need to lose a little weight? And most importantly, how do you feel? What is your quality of life? All of this is what we focus on. Also, when you get your lab work done, what is your hemoglobin A1C? The target should be 7% or less. Keep that number in your mind. Diabetes damages the feet, the kidney, and the eyes at first, and then eventually we also find it can cause coronary vascular disease too. But for foot care, the person with diabetes every day, you wash your feet, wash them properly. Dry your feet, dry between the toes. Moisturize your feet, but do not put moisturizer between the toes. Make sure that you wear cotton socks, right? If you're going to have your toes cut by somebody trained who knows how to cut them. Examine your feet every day. Do not walk barefoot. Please, please, please do not walk barefooted, because if you injure or cause trauma to the feet, you may not feel it because your diabetes has damaged the nerves to the feet. And finally, when you buy shoes that are comfortable and that you can wear without causing blisters or trauma to the feet. Now we have research that shows that I can prevent the eye damage, the kidney damage, the foot damage, and the amputations by just keeping my blood glucose under control and taking care of myself.
There's no such thing as a diabetic diet, but it's all about how much I eat, the timing of my meals. So it's your portion sizes is what is important. Now, what we do recommend is that persons eat at least 3 balanced meals per day and small snacks. Snacks usually mean smaller, more nourishing meals, which we usually recommend that it be your fruits, your vegetables, or you can also use your nuts. Each meal or snack should contain protein because we need it to be balanced as well. Each meal should contain at least your protein and your fat. And we also want them to select a variety of foods from all the food groups. So there is some recommendations about the amount of fruits that you should eat per day. We usually say 2 to 3 servings. We want you to include a variety of vegetables daily. We also want you to include more peas, beans, and nuts in your daily meals. Reduce your intake of salty and processed foods, and to reduce your intake of fats and oils, and that of sugary foods and drinks. You aim for foods that have high sources of fiber, such as your whole wheat bread, whole grain rice, flour, more of your ground provisions. They will give you fiber, right? And that will slow down the rate at which your body breaks down the food, so you won't have a rapid increase in your blood sugar levels versus if you eat foods that are low in these added fibers. When you're having alcohol as a person living with diabetes is not to have it on an empty stomach, because it gives the risk of lowering your blood sugar. And also what we want you to do is that once you have diabetes, we do not really recommend the mixed drinks, so as to say, because they usually have a sweetened base. For women, it's usually you can have a drink per day, and for men is no more than 2 drinks. And what is a drink? Usually for beer, it's not more than 12 ounces. And for like a shot, is usually a shot, which is about 1.5 ounces. And for wine, recommendation is usually about 5 ounces thereabout.
There are several researches that have shown that physical activity, when done properly, for persons who are diabetic, again, you heard it, allows you to use up glucose. For children, the recommendation is at least 60 minutes, 5 days a week of moderate to vigorous activity, and it must be a combination of muscle and bone strengthening activity. That's the recommendation for our children. For adults, it's at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week to get some health benefit, meaning increased circulation, reduced stress. and for the elderly, it's at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week. If you're a diabetic patient, these are some of the activities that are very good for you. Swimming, jogging, dancing, these activities, they're not very vigorous. You maintain them at a low to moderate pace, and it's a very effective way of managing and controlling your blood glucose or your blood sugar. If you are going to start a physical activity program, that you check with your doctor before you start, because if you have a condition, if you're diabetic, hypertensive, you have any other medical condition, your doctor will determine the intensity level, the type of activities that you can do.
Persons living with diabetes mellitus have multiple psychosocial issues related to diabetes management and its complications even before COVID. And there's an entity called diabetic distress, which refers to the negative emotions such as feeling hopeless, angry, or frustrated that persons who are diagnosed with diabetes experience, especially if they lack social support. I must mention we have the mental health helpline, which is 888-639-5433, or simply remember 888-NEW LIFE, which is a 24-hour, 7 days per week psychological support produced by psychologists. When you call this number, they can provide emotional support for you. If you are feeling any form of emotional distress, they can provide support for you, and where you need additional help, they will direct you to additional help.
As we traverse the final leg of Jamaica Magazine for today, productivity is our focus.
The Ministry of Labour and Social Security, through the Jamaica Productivity Centre, JPC, has been developing and implementing programs as well as conducting workshops to assist individuals, companies and firms optimize their efficiency and drive productivity improvement in Jamaica. The JPC recently hosted a virtual session that brought accomplished individuals and high achievers in one setting to share needed information on how productivity can be achieved and its impact on society. Productivity, in simple terms, is how efficient an input is converted to output. When this happens, economic growth and the country's development is fueled because of the increased goods and services produced with greater efficiency. Businesses will realize higher profit as they produce more outputs from lower input due to the systems they implement. Their competitiveness will improve and they will be able to better compensate employees. Citizens will realize improvements in their standard of living and will be able to exercise higher levels of consumption of goods and services even with reduced working hours. Higher economic growth measured by increased gross domestic product (GDP) output resulting from an increase in productivity will also benefit the country. How? Through the generation of larger tax revenue for government. This allows for greater investments in infrastructure and services, including education, healthcare, welfare, transportation, roads, water, and more. Gross domestic product (GDP) is the sum of labor productivity, capital intensity growth, and total factor productivity. Therefore, increases in all three areas equate to us having a booming economy. JPC has found that there are several factors that hamper productivity that need to be treated with urgency. They include bureaucracy, low value-added production, crime, traffic congestion, lack of suitable technology and capital investment, as well as job and skill mismatch and limiting international trade flows. As it relates to labor productivity, the JPC recommends that companies and firms, public or private, small or large, research what is happening in their industry and make innovative changes on a consistent basis. Where enterprises are shifting from being more labor-intensive to technology, such as artificial intelligence, they must seek to create the right balance between human effort and technology to optimize productivity. Integrating the right technology and a smart business process that is measurable, result-based and time-based is now an essential part of the solution for firms to optimize productivity. This includes establishing customer service platforms and payment gateways that are responsive. Every worker needs to know what is required of them, with the worker and supervisor using verifiable established targets.
You cannot improve if you're not measuring. You won't know what to do, and we'll just be all based on a gut feeling. And so that's one of the things we want to encourage us, even as individuals, organizations, to have that culture or habit of measuring what matters, right? And not just measuring everything, but measuring what matters and working to improve on those gaps that exist.
The Labour and Social Security Ministry, through the Jamaica Productivity Centre, has started its very own modernization exercise through the institution of a digital records management system, moving a number of its services online as it upgrades its network and investing in new technologies to improve efficiency. Investing in research and development and facilitating the creative, scientific and technological expertise of Jamaicans will spur innovation and the creation of new products and services to transform industries to meet the demands of the fourth industrial revolution.
For example, we have agriculture. Agriculture could be transformed to an high-level agricultural sector. And I'm thinking also with that, there can also be greater linkages between the goods producing and service producing sector.
Enhancing productivity, quality and competitiveness through world-class individuals will require a culture of continuous training.
We have to learn how to accept or create structures that allow innovation, allow change, to build a culture of continuous learning and improvement. Let us start with access to broadband. Broadband can give us that quantum leap forward in Jamaica, tied with a digital literacy program for people of all ages, tied with schools that focus on continuous learning and continuous improvement.
We need higher education and more focused training programs, upskilling the global services industry. So that's basically like the BPO.
There's the possibility for individuals to use the internet and free education available online to advance productivity and for maximizing on remote working in this increasingly digital world.
Working on your own individual digital literacy, being familiar with the tools that are out there, not just for consumption, but what the possibilities are. And there's so many resources online that you can find to do that. Coursera, Udemy, and these are their platforms in their own right. Another one too that's really good, because I find that the things on Coursera and Udemy tend to maybe work best if you've already completed high school and university. If you need to bring your math skills up to date, you can use a resource like Khan Academy.
Increased education and training, certification, quality management and leadership, rewards and incentives, innovation, having the right technology, automation and tools, and using those to full capacity are all key tenets of long-term productivity. Of course, all this doesn't necessarily mean working harder. Instead, it's all about working smarter.
And this is where our journey ends for today. Thank you so much for your company. Be sure to join us again tomorrow. Until then, keep watching this and other programs on the JIS's YouTube channel. Visit our website, jis.gov.jm, and find us on all the major social media platforms and through our mobile app that's Android and iOS compatible. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Adrian Atkinson, reminding you to stay healthy and stay safe.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.